Hey, everybody, welcome to the Ryan Liner podcast, where we talk about all of the things that have to do with existence, whether that's spiritual or any kind of paranormal stuff or just philosophy in general. So, if you're into existence and knowing why you exist, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can get more great material like this. And it's how, YouTube knows we're here. We have a cool show. We're going to be talking about CE5 today. For anybody out there who doesn't know what that is, CE5 is kind of a standard protocol for trying to make close encounters of the fifth kind, meaning that you self-initiate some sort of contact with what we would consider to be ET craft or ET people or anything along those lines. I started a group for this a while back, haven't really gotten to use it that much. Lately got back involved in it and met Kate Kaniecki here, who has been doing this for a while. She is going to educate me on this as much as we're going to educate everybody else on this and also some of the weird narratives that are going on there about stuff. So, Kate, if you want to take it from there, let's tell us all about you.
Okay, yeah. Well, the ET phenomenon has been a part of my entire life. So to me, this is all normal. And I forget that there are people out there that are unaware or they're still in the spot of, well, it's hard to believe we're the only ones, in the universe. And I feel like that's always the catalyst to get people curious and going down the rabbit hole if they choose, right? Um, CE5, I came across Dr. Greer's work probably in my mid 20s, but it didn't really become a part of my journey until probably about 6 years ago. Of course, I deep dived into it. I went to one of his conferences for, CE5 training, and then have just been trying to get groups together. I mean, I like to do CE5s on my own. I feel I have more, uh, I guess, contact in that sense. It's hard to get everyone on the same page, like coherence.
Yeah.
So for me, I've had my own personal experiences, and I believe in one universe, one people, which is what Dr. Greer really preaches. But I think that it's important that we keep our own journeys. So we learn from other people's journeys, but I think it's important to always build your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to kind of go into, since you started out by working with Dr. Greer directly at one of his conferences, do you want to kind of go into telling people who maybe don't know what CE5 is at all and how it functions or how you kind of do it?
Sure. So, I first watched his CE5 documentary on Amazon Prime and was like, I'm doing this. And I had what equipment that I had. I had radios already, I had a Bluetooth speaker, and it was just my husband and I, and we went out and a spacecraft came. And I was like, this is amazing. So a year later, when he started to do conferences again because of COVID, everything was shut down. So this was the first conference he did in 2022. Um, and I was like, I'm going to that. And this, he had his whole team there talk about every aspect of CE5. He went into great detail about um, UAPs, UFOs, man-made versus non-man-made, and how to differentiate because there's a lot of information and understanding that you have to have when it comes to our own government and what's out there, what they put out there in order to help your discernment of are you really making contact with, high intelligent beings, or is this the government coming in and trying to, you know, not, trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, and he does on these trainings huge CE5 gatherings, which of course orbs showed up, things happened. That was amazing. Every time it's always amazing. But yeah, the whole conference is helping you understand how to put together groups, the equipment you can use, how to use it, settings for your camera and your videography if you choose, how to be safe with using laser pointers, how to, build your team. And I think again, this is just a guideline. So he goes into great depths, but do you need to follow everything to the T? I don't think so. I think, in my personal opinion, it really just matters what your intention is. Do you intend on making peaceful contact, or do you intend on just, having a fun night? Because it matters.
Uh, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. Yeah, I would say that people that have where I've heard the nothing works type of thing, um, I don't know. It's sort of like a lot of times when you talk to people about that, and it's well, I don't really know what I was doing, and they didn't really have any clear intention. It's kind of like they're just going out there and hoping something, flies in front of them. Um, Whereas you meet people who actually get into like a good meditative state or something else, and they have totally different experiences from that. You've obviously had visual kind of confirmation. Have you had any other like, are you a contactee or anything, or would you consider yourself one?
Yeah, I had my own abduction experience at 18. I've learned that I'm part of the hybridization program, and I have hybridized children that
Well,
learn from me. A lot of my contact is in dreams, and they teach me things, make me aware of how things work. I was shown how time is on Earth versus, out in space and away from Earth. Um, yeah, so, and then of course with the CE5, that's more conscious and it's more craft. And since I started doing all of the CE5 work, now I see spacecraft. Um, Now, I should back up the train a little bit because before I started doing CE5s, my intention was to make contact before I knew about CE5. Okay, so my intention was, okay, how do I communicate? How do I communicate? And that took me on a spiritual journey, and I learned all about meditation, learned about chakras, everything basic, how the Hermetic principles to quantum physics, everything kind of is entangled. And then CE5 was presented to me, and I feel like it's important to have all that basic knowledge. But just with me intending and focused on that for a month straight, I started to be at a frequency where you could just see the spacecraft in the sky as you're traveling along your ways. So then that kind of went away because I went through a dark night of the soul. And then I decided to, really hit the CE5 again hard because I was like, okay, what am I doing? I need to get out of this funk. And and I think a lot of people really miss the idea behind how much you have to work on yourself, your vibration. You have to do the shadow work. You have to do all that stuff if you want to have good contact experiences. I'm not saying that contact doesn't happen with people that don't practice that, but to have, I think, in my opinion, a good experience of that, it's beneficial. I think it just provides fear a place to kind of seep in when you don't have, the basics of, working on yourself, discernment, learning about how the universe works and its laws and things like that. One of the things that I learned early on was, duality. Like we live in a world of duality. And I really struggled with Dr. Greer saying that there aren't any evil ETs out there. You know,
yeah,
I was like, but that's not, I said that's not possible because, everything has an opposite,
right.
and the way that we experience the opposites is based off of our perception, right? It's a level of a degree, of based on our experiences and our beliefs, how we perceive and experience a situation, the world around us, right? So
Well,
I struggled with that. I was like, no, I don't think that there aren't any evil aliens, but what I've come to understand is that relevant at this time? No, I don't think it's relevant. And I do believe that if you focus on something enough, then that's what is going to become your reality. You're going to see that.
Right.
everywhere, because that's your belief
Yeah.
forming, and then that's how you're going to perceive things. Um, and I think that's why there's so many people that, they're like, oh no, the aliens are coming to get us and they're bad. And, how can we trust them? And it's like, don't you see that that's all the beliefs that you hold for some reason that you have no idea that you're not even aware of that, you know?
Well, I always try to make to people too. I'm like, look, if you're already on the side of believing in stuff and you think things have been here for thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands, because our civilization being as old as it is, doesn't mean jack crap with like the rest of the universe. Literally, all the time period humans have been alive is like the width of a hair held up along a 1 mile long rope, and that's about the time period that we are actually inhabiting. Um,
Right.
but yeah, if somebody you've already said you think people have been here this long, but yet you think now is when they're hatching their attempt. Like they didn't want to conquer us when we had low technology. They wanted it to be somewhat fair fight, like Predator or something. We have to be in a jet for them to attack us. No, it doesn't make any sense for that to be the general dynamic of what seems to be going on. Let me ask you this, because I know Dr. Greer has talked about this too, and it is a different thing. We've got this, we're in a realm, we're in this material universe, or a military term, I'll use theater of operation. But we're here, and then you've got all of these other different things out there. Have you ever any experience or talked with any of the ETs from our sort of our same plane of existence about interdimensional stuff from higher and lower dimensions that can try to get into this? I know Dr. Greer has talked about that a lot before.
I haven't had any of my own personal dialogue with high intelligent beings. A lot of that information comes from Dr. Greer, and I feel like I can believe in him based off of his um, what he has done, what he says that he's researched, the people that he's spoken to. He's got a wealth of knowledge. I find it very credible. And I think that's something again we learn our discernment, and it's important to not be open-minded, but also you don't want to, grab the tailcoat and just go of somebody
Right.
else. So, personally, not have my own dialogue, but I do believe that there are infinite ways that contact happens. Interdimensional that. But I do listen and follow a lot of channelers. Bashar is a one of my favorites. Of course, he's very prominent in the communities. So I've talked with him. I guess technically, I did have a private one-on-one session with him. So I guess technically that is me having a dialogue. But I didn't talk
Yeah.
about interdimensional. I didn't talk about the traveling with him. That was more like my own personal stuff.
Yeah, no,
But
that's cool. Yeah.
and like people that channel beings, all of these beings are saying basically the same stuff, so I always like to validate that with unrelated people and sources. If they're saying the same thing, there's something to it. There's some type of truth to it. And really, it's just, do you want to believe in it or not? Do you want to partake and participate or not? Because you have the choice. We all are the masters of our reality. So, does it matter what anybody else says and what they believe? To them, it does, but it really shouldn't be for you and yourself. Is that what you prefer? Then great. Maybe you can, incorporate that and live that way, but you don't have to.
Well, the experience that you had, you used the word abduction as opposed to contact. So do you mind talking about whether this was something you considered to be a negative experience or maybe negative at the time because you just didn't know what was going on and now it's positive, but how has that all played out?
Sure, and that's such a great question. Yeah, I like to say that I had an experience, but abduction is well known as to more of what my experience is. So I like to say abduction experience, but yeah, abduction is like a negative connotation, right? Um, and at the time, in the moment of it happening, And I can go through it. It's a quick story. So it was just a regular night. I'm still living at my parents, at 18 at my parents' house, and it was just some random night. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a tall being, thin, in front of my window, bright light coming through it. I was completely paralyzed and I was screaming. I was like trying to scream because I didn't know what was happening. And it wasn't that I was afraid of the being. I didn't like that I was paralyzed,
Sure.
that I couldn't move, you know?
Right. It's like, this
And
isn't necessary. Just talk to me.
yeah, exactly. But um yeah, so and I guess I was released and everything left. I sat straight up and I was like, whoa, like that was crazy. And then I just went back to sleep. And then in the morning, I was all excited about it. And I was telling my dad and my parents, I said, oh my gosh, I was abducted last night. This happened to me. Dad, I was visited. And my dad's like, all right, well, just let me know if it happens again.
Yeah.
So
What else do you say back to it,
I thought that was a perfect response. I mean, my parents always knew that I believed in aliens,
Well,
and they allowed and held space, I guess, in a way
yeah.
for me. And they're always supportive, and I thought that was a perfect response from my dad.
Yeah.
I was
Let
like,
me know if it
okay.
happens again. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it was a negative thing. I was very fascinated by it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is when you because everybody says you kind of have memories from stuff, but it's almost like remembering a dream that went on. So people either seem to have a negative emotional vibration about it or a positive emotional vibration about it, that which sounds more like what you're talking about there. Um, with the different, we were talking about, we'll just jump into channeling a little bit because I think that that area is kind of fascinating because it's one of those things where it's like, when somebody can say, yeah, a week from now, this exact event is going to happen, and then it happens, great, awesome. This person made a prediction that comes true. But we also know, and from my own personal experience, how many charlatans there are out there with all sorts of different channels or whatever that they're doing. Uh, but yeah, a lot of the ones who seem to be the I don't want to say top channels because that sounds like kind of a weird way to put it, but a lot of the people out there in the channeling community that do have what I'll call respect from the rest of the community as that they appear to be for the real. They're the real thing. Yeah, they all kind of come through and are talking about this different sort of information that comes through to them about what's going on in the world and what's going on in connection with ETs. What's your take on that from everything that you've kind of gathered and observed?
What I've learned is that i- predictions are only that which in the moment is that energy is read as,
Yeah,
if
the
that makes
most
sense.
likely thing given what's
Mhm.
going on right now.
Yeah, but it's like, what's the point? Because every decision, everything changes
Mhm.
moment by moment. And, they talk about probabilities, which I think is that's a better word than prediction. It's like the
Right,
probability could be this. And
right,
it's like, okay. But, sometimes when you're aware of something happening, that right there changes it. It's like just becoming aware of information. Oh, this could probably happen, and this person is predicting this. Okay, well, I can choose either to partake in that or ignore it, and not worry about it. I mean, so it's like it's always fascinating and it's fun, right? We should always have fun, not take things so seriously. Um, and I think that it's just to understand, like it's a probability. When someone predicts something, it's just what they can foretell or see or the energy they're reading in that moment. When it comes to channelers, and they're giving us information like, oh, open contact 2027, there's going to be a major event. And the one thing that I like about Bashar in telling us all that is that he's very honest and says, like, this is the only reason why we started to tell you about this is because the probability of the timeline happening is over 90%.
right.
Meaning there's still variables. I mean, they thought that the event was going to be in 2024 first, but then based off of like the election, that things that happen that are major in our world changes open contact, and everything else. But there's so many parallel timelines that we're merging with and splitting from, and it's like an onion. There's all these layers. You have your individual, we have the collective, we have, so there's all these different types of timelines being created by individuals, by the collective, by the events, and what have you. So, it's like just go with the flow. It's cool and it's fun to, be aware of predictions and probabilities, but it's like don't let it run your life. That's how I
Right.
feel. Enjoy it, have fun with it. But yeah, don't get so caught up in the serious of don't make it so serious.
Yeah. To go kind of back to both not taking it so seriously and just kind of we'll call it like daily practice, like getting your vibration on the right kind of area for this kind of thing. What do you do particular I don't want to say practices or like what's your way of kind of getting yourself in tune with everything?
Yeah, I like to call it spiritual hygiene
Hmm.
because just like we brush our teeth and we shower every day, we should be doing some type of spiritual cleansing for our aura and our energy. It's part of, being good. Like everything is energy. So that should actually be number one before you shower and brush your teeth, I feel like, because um, disease and things like that are energetic imbalances. So things I like to do, and I don't do this every single day, but I'm at least clearing my aura with Palo Santo, or I'm meditating, maybe just taking some time to journal. I mean, these are all very simplistic things, and I think that we take for granted how much they help us energetically. If we're releasing thoughts and getting that out on paper, like that's doing something to keep the energy flowing through our entire body. So we don't keep anything that's harboring that can fester into dis-ease within our energy centers. Um, and you can do rituals, you can do simple practices like that. Some people are very like um religious with, oh, I gotta do this every single day. Okay, well, that's because you believe that. Again, this comes back to your belief. I could sit here and say, well, I believe in spiritual hygiene. That's why I partake in that stuff. But I could be like, I don't believe in spiritual hygiene and I'm fine. And if I truly believe that, then I'll be fine.
Hmm.
It's really but yeah, those are the things that I'll practice like on a daily. It's one of those. It's like, or all of them, depending on, like today, I'm like, man, the energy feels so weird. Like even yesterday, like the energy, something feels weird. It's not my own. So I'm like, angels and guides, hey, like whatever this energy is, if it's not here for my highest good, can you please remove that from my field?
Yeah.
Or I'll sit there and meditate on it, or I'll sit there and just light some Palo Santo and just with intention. I mean, again, back to the intention, it's so important. And this helps raise your vibration and your frequency. You're doing something for your energy. And you may not be fully aware of how that affects you until after you implement these practices and then you stop doing them. And then you're like, oh man, like that was really doing something for me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the problems or obstacles I guess we face with like mainstream, health or society or anything like this is that okay, let's take things like kind of what you were talking about there with your power of intention, just in that. And you have people that they experience these sort of miraculous healings from like tumors disappearing out of their body. RJ Spina, if you're familiar with him, he's a guy who broke his back in
Mm.
a very bad accident, and they told him you'll never even have feeling in your lower half, and now he walks around and runs and does everything. But he's written a book about it, talked about it. He just sort of didn't accept the prognosis they were giving to him and said, "No, I'm going to be perfectly fine." Um, so kind of like streaming this is where we're gonna blend ET and kind of like the spiritual thing here for a minute because so there are some people out there that purely look at this as the sort of like, okay, these are, there's other mammalian or living organisms out there like us, whatnot. And then they've got, the other half of on the spiritual side or whatever. Are you familiar at all with like Chris Bledsoe and his book UFO God? Okay, perfect. So this is a perfect
I'm
thing.
in the middle of reading it.
Perfect. Okay. I just spoke. I like messaged him the other day, and like so I'm hopefully gonna have him on in the fall. Um,
Excellent.
but yeah, but that's he excellent book. Him, if you've ever checked out Ryan's podcast, also Bledsoe said so. I would definitely go and do that.
Oh yeah, I gotta do that still.
But yeah, Chris's thing, he's had this experience, his ongoing contactee experience. They have cured him of these miraculous things, and this is other people have these same sorts of things going on. So there's these different people I hear constantly commentating about this as to whether they think this is a spiritual phenomenon or an ET phenomenon or both or interdimensional. What's your take on things from your experiences as to what is the connection between like people thinking that ETs, some of the ETs are like angels and some of them are demons versus they're just regular creatures like you and I out there. Um, and then also, like we had talked about, you've got that interdimensional type of thing that people want to keep throwing in there too. What's your take on it?
Well, I think everything is spiritual first. So whatever happens, like it can all be everything's spiritual. It's just, are you tuned in? Are you tuned out? Do you go with the flow? Do you work with it? What your experiences are. Like everything happens for you and not to you. And that could be why, because of maybe some contracts that you have, agree on experiences that you want to have, whatever. But I think that's irrelevant. The fact is that we have experiences and it's up to us to decipher those for ourselves because it's happening for a reason. We don't have to do it, but I think that that is part of um, what it means to have soul growth. When you really allow yourself to understand how you're affected, what it's brought within, brought up inside of you, your feelings, your thoughts. I think that that's the point of life in itself. It's like just to have soul growth. Um, so. And when it comes to people having healing and miraculous things happen like that, um, I think I think it has a lot to do with what we can learn from that person's experience. It's all spiritual again to me that it's happening. But why does it happen? This is where I think like when it comes to spiritual contracts, sometimes things are going to happen to us that we're unaware of agreeing to
Mm,
on certain levels, like the
100%.
hybridization program. Like I didn't know I was doing that when I came here. Like we all have amnesia, whatever. But I learned about it and it helped me. And when you look back in hindsight, you start to see why things happen in your life the way that they did. So if you're paying attention and you're doing the inner work and you're journaling, then these miracles that are happening to people are there for various reasons. It's either to help others around them, it's for their own experience. They're making that sacrifice to go through that trial, tribulation, the accident. I mean, um, Dr. Joe Dispenza is another one who was paralyzed, and he, through his techniques, like healed himself.
Yeah.
Um, um, there's so many people out there that hear these stories and they're able to talk about it. And I think it's happening more and more because that's the energy that we're coming into is understanding that our bodies, our beliefs, we can heal ourselves. And we need to allow ourselves to do that. But we have been conditioned to believe that we have to be dependent on the system. And I'm not saying doctors and all that are bad. I think they're great. I think it's a great tool. It's great to have that support, that guidance. But I think that we need to also understand that we're in control ultimately of what happens to us and our bodies. And if we have the belief and we know, somebody's not going to tell us we're going to die of this and or that we'd never be able to walk again. If you subscribe to their belief of that and that becomes your belief, well, then yeah, of course that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So people that are like, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. That's when they're like, you hear people talking to their own cells, like cells, you can do it, you can grow
Right.
stronger,
Yeah.
It's all these different things. and not everything is going to be the same. It's just whatever resonates is what's going to work for you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That was, I lost my train of thought on what I was saying earlier, but what it was that I was thinking of, so I'm a science guy. I came from a quantum mechanics background. That's when I was 19, I bought a book by a guy called Nick Herbert and started learning quantum mechanics and physics and science and all that stuff. So, for me, people would think that that would put you on kind of the more secular thing, but no, not really. When you understand quantum mechanics is, yeah, everything is a weird energy called quanta that isn't even anything. It's just the only word we have to describe something that we can't grasp and put our hands on. And in that same manner, you have, anybody out there teaching, we'll just call it the power of intention to make it simple. There's no equation where I can say, okay, Ryan thought about this thing for 12 hours and then the next day it happened. Repeat that process now. Go think of somebody, calling you for 12 hours and it'll happen the next day because
Right,
it's different for everybody and because not everything works out when you're wanting it to, it's like there's no way to quantify this kind of thing the same way with telepathy and the telepathy tapes, where the only way they're quantifying it is by literally videotaping people doing it and showing that it's possible because they can't make an equation for it, basically. And I
right,
think but that is something that I think people are starting to just go kind of having your attitude about it. More, like, I don't really need an explanation for it. It just works. I don't know why it's working, but it is. For some reason, when I think about this or that happening, these different good things happen. And yeah, definitely, I think some people have more luck in that or more like, I don't know, ability to control things than others do. And that could be a part of, like you were talking about, what did you want to be a challenge in this life when you came down? Um, if you were in a car accident and you get both your legs broken, yeah, somebody may have just run a red light because they were paying attention to their cell phone, or it's because you picked out a challenge to learn how to walk again after breaking your legs. Not something I personally would think I would sign up for, but here we all
right,
are. We're down here for some kind of a reason. Um, yeah, I just see that sort of thing really kind of changing. And I think watching CE5 catch on and the amount of millions of views that the different videos Dr. Greer puts out or anybody on that subject matter or the movies shows that this is that we've kind of come into a new time zone where people are just going, I don't necessarily need to be able to have a math book explaining how something's going to work. It just works because it does. Um,
right.
and I think that's a really good direction that everybody's headed in. Do you, from you spoke about a hybridization program. Do you have any insight on that? Because that's where when people hear hybrid, this makes people nervous. They seem to always think like, oh yeah, meeting people would be great, but this idea of a combination of the two, whatever reason, it freaks people out. Because they don't understand what the purpose would be for. Could you explain a little about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny that people kind of freak out because we are hybrids, like already.
Yeah,
Um, we mix with our own but yeah, when it comes to extraterrestrial, and again, like our DNA, we have extraterrestrial DNA, like we're hybrids. So, but when you start to see like a mix physically, I think that's what they just don't know what to do with it. All that I understand about the hybridization program is that it's actually for helping the Greys be able to continue on their lineage. I personally don't understand the point of a species surviving since we're all energy and we can just come back as whatever. And I think that that will soon be revealed to us, like when open contact happens, to have a better understanding of that. Because they've gone through great lengths, but that's what I understand that the hybridization program is. And souls, such as myself, have wanted to help that agenda. So, and I think that um, I wish I knew more about me before incarnating, but
like
I
pre-birth
think that it's
memory.
in, yeah,
Yeah.
because I would love to know. I would love to hear the discussion between me and my divine counsel. Like, okay, I want to be part of the hybridization program, but I probably shouldn't know anything about it. But I should have this innate knowing and feeling about aliens in general, so that you know what I mean. It's all these things. And maybe if I knew everything, maybe I'd be like, I don't want to do it. So I'm glad that I'm a part of it. And now that I'm aware of it, I can still choose whether to partake or not partake. You know, it's still my choice. They can't be like, no, you still got to do it, even though you agreed to come here and do it. If you don't want to do it anymore, you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people get overcomplicate every aspect of contact, and it doesn't have to be. I think, it's if we're too serious and we're too caught up in all the details, then that's where things can get more on a lower frequency. That's when you become fanatical,
Right.
and you try to control everything. And that's not the vibe. You want to be a curious child having fun, going through this life experience, and we may perceive like horrible things happening to us as, these terrible things that we'll never recover. But that's all part of it. And when you understand that, this is, we're infinite beings and this is part of the experience, it's just an experience. This isn't anything that's defining who you are. It's just helping you understand who you are, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, uh,
No, no,
go
go on.
ahead.
Go on with what you're going to say there.
Oh, no, that's all I had to say.
Oh, I was going to say, finding out who you are. It's funny you said that. There was somebody that I was watching yesterday, and I forget exactly how he put this. And it was somebody talking about what was the reason for living, and I don't know if it was during some kind of like out of body experience or what it was. But the guy said, "Are you a charitable person?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I give to charities." He goes, "Okay, how do you know that?" Because you give to charities. If you were in a place where nobody ever needed charity, would you know you were a charitable person? No, because you'd never have to give charity to anybody. You'd never know if you were an angry person. This is kind of figuring out the nature of your
Right.
soul. So, kind of, or like who you are, so to speak, down here. And again, there's multiple different places, that from what everybody seems to think of, the more we expand out on that thought and concept, the more different possibilities there are that go along with it. Um, what do you think if you had to say, if you had to make your different guesses about things, and this is a loaded question, I don't mind answering it too, but do you feel that you have a particular kind of like purpose for being here in this particular incarnation out of, the many that we all have? What's your reason for being here in this incarnation here at this time?
Yeah, I used to get hung up on this and like, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Oh, I guess it's just to make contact. I don't know. But I've let go of needing to have some grandiose purpose because sometimes the purpose is just to be and be there for others, to be of service when needed. Sometimes it's just helping a stranger out. It's all these little things that make a big difference that you don't always have to have some grand purpose. Now, I do believe that people can feel such a strong calling to something and it will turn into something grandiose. Um, but I think now in this moment, what I've come to understand about myself is I really like to empower people. I like people to not be in fear about anything. I feel like death and aliens are two big fears that people really
Right.
struggle with. And I feel like my purpose right now is that's what I want to do. I want to help people feel empowered, know that they are completely in control and you have to hold yourself accountable and there's nothing to fear. Like your fear is a manifestation of something that you can correct within yourself. So nothing is definite in that sense. Like everything is energy. So when you understand that energy never dies, it just is, it just transforms, it just evolves, everything will evolve. So if you are building resistance through insistence of something, like you're going to get yourself stuck. You have to learn how to let go and have acceptance with how things are and go with the flow. So when I was struggling to figure out what my purpose was, well, I was insisting that I needed this big grandiose purpose or that I had to know what it was. And really when I started to through different people, listening to different people's stories, when I started to understand it could just be that me existing is my purpose. And what is wrong with that? It doesn't
Right.
need to be some big movement I'm a part of, or, it's just merely existing and being the best version of myself that I can be in every given moment.
No, I think that nails it right on the head. Um, yeah, I try not to get hung. I think that's a lot of people out there. Everybody wants to be president type of syndrome.
Right.
And my question is always why? Why would you possibly want that job at this point? It's a terrible job. Um, but yeah, you have these different people who, are constantly kind of in this, who am I? What am I? Why am I not doing anything so important? Because they think that they're all supposed to serve that role. Well, you can't hit, there's 365 million Americans. If every one of them wanted to be president, there wouldn't be anybody out there doing any other job besides that. Nobody would be managing my
Right.
local bank that I go to. So yeah, everybody is down here for different reasons, especially, you hear these goofy, chicken soup for the soul type stories of the guy that was going to take his life and then somebody helped him by carrying his books for him from school, things like that
Hmm.
happened and then the person decided not to. And who knows if any of those are real or not. But that really is what it just comes down to. Sometimes your purpose for being here was because you made an agreement beforehand to support your family because there's going to be somebody who has a disability that's going to cost a lot of money and the family constantly needs money, and you don't pay attention to the fact that your family wouldn't be able to survive without you and the efforts you're putting into it and what you're doing. And so that's maybe what you guys had picked out as some kind of a soul group or something, before any of this different stuff happened. um,
Right.
but let's jump back. We'll go back into C5. So let's say that somebody is wanting to. We'll circle back here. So let's say that somebody is they're wanting to try this out. They want to get into this here. What would their process be?
I think it's worth to spend the $10 on the app, the CE5 app. It's a great guidance. Yeah. Um, meditation is very important. So if you can um, get to a point where you can get into a meditative state of samadhi, as Greer explains it. Even Dr. Joe Dispenza kind of has that same type of mentality. Like you want to get to the point where you're nowhere, no one, no thing, you know. And it's a very deep, yeah, yeah, it's a very deep meditative state, and it does take practice to get there. And I think that it's important because meditation is a big part of consciously putting your thoughts out and communicating with high level intelligent beings. So, the CE5 app is great. And then just daily practice of meditation. I mean, and the thing is, it's like, listen, I get it. Like, meditation may not be your thing, but at least learn how to get to that point so that when you want to do CE5, you can utilize that tool. Um, but of course, when people really get into meditation, it's like, wow, this is great, But I mean, you don't have to be religious about meditating every single day. It's just do it enough so that you understand the practice of it. And then when you do need to use it, that you're good with the CE5 protocols. And then remote viewing is really important. Practice remote viewing. It's so easy. I mean, the thing is you need a friend, I feel like. A practice that I like to do is I'll have a little box and I'll have my husband put something in the box. And then I just take my time. The box can sit on the counter for a whole month, and when I think about it, I'll try to tune into it. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'm just laying there and I'm like, what's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box? And I just start allowing and paying attention to what's coming through. And then when I feel like I have like a good guess, maybe I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a hit, um, then I'll guess. And that takes the pressure off of you. But yeah, remote viewing is very important because you have to learn how to sense things or energies or however you want to, describe it when you're meditating and trying to make contact. So it's good to have discernment within that as well.
Yeah, let me ask you. So specifically on remote viewing, and this is something again, since I was like 19, I've been kind of into this type of thing. I've had my hits and my unsuccesses with it, but again, I don't. It's like you said, you have to have somebody coming up with targets for you and this kind of thing, and to be able to check it with, and otherwise, you're not going to be really be able to do that. Do you use kind of like extended remote viewing or like more like coordinate remote viewing? Because I would think extended would be the kind that would transfer over to what's in the box, whereas the coordinate one is where you'd have, your husband or somebody making targets for you.
Yeah, I feel like the coordinate is a little bit more tricky. I think that it's better for beginners to do I mean, because you can channel and pick up on it no matter where it is,
Yeah.
in the world or whatever. But it starts you off with something simplified where you can get really hung up on the whole picture of like an actual place.
Uh-huh.
Like everyone knows what a house looks like, and immediately, like your memory fills you with your own house and houses you've seen. And I think with the box idea or something that's simple, you you don't know what to think, except for that it's like yay big, you know. Or something else that's a good practice is if you want to use a simplistic picture that somebody is holding, and then you can try to remote what's on the picture itself.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I find it's for me, it's tricky to do like locations and what's out, oh, who's at Susan's house? Like, oh, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I can guess, my ego mind comes in way too easily for those kind of practices.
Perfect. Cool. Do do you have anything anything other stuff that you'd like to talk about or share with anybody?
Hmm. Um, I think it's important to join in the communities of around CE5. Like I thought it was great that I stumbled across your Facebook page. I was literally looking for because honestly, in this area, it's hard to find
Yeah, Midwest is
people
not.
that
Yeah.
I always
Wow.
say they're so behind on the times. Like, uh,
That yes, that for totally different reasons. I will New York and Los Angeles or California and the East Coast, they know what's going on, and then it somehow comes to like Chicago like 6 months to a year later or something.
yeah, it's bizarre. So I think it's really important to try and jump into community pages that are that you can connect hopefully with people that you can talk to about CE5. Maybe not necessarily go out and do a CE5 event, although definitely if you can, if people are down, do it. But I think that having someone to talk to keep you um, raising your vibrations, keeping you focused on the idea of open contact and making peaceful contact and working on your intentions and working on yourself. So I think because when you're by your lonesome self and you have no one to talk to about it, then it just kind of goes by the wayside, or you don't, unless you're actually actively researching and diving deep in. I think that it helps when you have friends that will share that interest. It kind of helps speed that along, and then things happen, it seems like magic and quicker, and you're like, wow. That's kind of what happened with me and my best friend. I was when I told her I wanted to try and communicate with ETs, and then we started our spiritual journeys together. And yeah, we were just constantly discussing everything that we were exploring and what the videos we were coming across and the people's stories, and it just like sped things up. So, I think it's important to try and build your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the kind of the one thing I always tell everybody is just don't go in from a state of fear. Like humans are
Yeah,
fear-based animals. We're constantly, it's just biologically, we are going to the part of our brain that fires first. I know this for a fact. The part of our brain that fires first is your flight or fight response when you are even given a new fact. Like, hey, did you
right.
hear what just happened on the news today? your fight or flight response will go off as to whether it wants to believe that or not. Or is this fact scary and I can't deal with it. But yeah, anybody trying to do any kind of communication, if you're coming at this from any kind of an area where you're afraid, they're not going to interact with you because they're not going to make you more afraid. That's not going to help you out at all. So, um, yeah, I think that's
And that's a state of being,
yeah.
right? Like that's like attracts like. So if you're constantly in that state of fear, like that's all you're going to experience.
Yeah, yeah. How do I put this? Like, keeping the right company. Like people, like your mom or dad might say this to you, and they're saying it in a totally different way. But like keeping the right kind of company is you're going to carry the same kind of vibrations you do with a group. So just the fact of
Absolutely.
reaching out and trying to have communications with people that are into the same sort of thing, you then welcome that sort of like flow of energy into your timeline. I don't know any other way to say it, but
Right.
it's like once you can be somebody, for example, who wants to really experience ghosts, right? And so you go to all these haunted houses where you have your EVEP recorder and all of this,
Mhm.
but you're like this terrified person, and so you have this you never really get anything, and then you'll see other different people who are very calm and even-minded going in, and they come out with all kinds of different, recordings or loud bangs, whatever it is. It's a different experience for them in that particular area, and I think that the CE5 thing translates over to that, completely the same way.
I agree. Yeah.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. This has been interesting. We're gonna get one of these groups arranged here, and we'll figure that sort of stuff out. And hopefully, everybody who sees us will be able to come and be a part of that. If not, guys, again, please, if you like this kind of material, and you must, because you probably wouldn't be here at the end of this call otherwise, go ahead and like that like button, and go ahead and subscribe, and we will be back at you soon. All right, have a good one, guys.
Thanks. Thanks, Brian.